Hi, everyone. Welcome to the fourth episode of Channeling Hallmark, the podcast where we talk about all things that make us feel warm and fuzzy, like laying on a beach and listening to the ocean sounds. I'm your host, Dylan Cashbaugh.
And I'm your other host, Keetin Markey. But before we dive into this episode, we really just want to let everyone know that we are safe from the fires in Los Angeles as of now, because we live in Burbank. We know many people who have had to evacuate, and we send all of our love and thoughts to those affected by the fires. And we'll add in our show notes ways to help those affected. And we hope this episode brings some joy to everyone listening and to have a little escape from the devastation that's happening here in our hometown, Los Angeles.
We are here if anyone needs help in any way. Not that we can do much, but we are here for emotional and mental support.
Absolutely.
So, as a reminder, December is the most popular month for couples to get engaged. So this January, we are keeping things a little focused on weddings, engagements, and things that might have to do with those and helping couples get ready for the big day. As part of that, we will be reviewing the movie Love at First Dance and talking to someone who helps choreograph couples' first dances, Catherine Ricafort McCreary. But before we get into all that, Keetin, what are we sipping on today?
Oh, we needed some tea today. It's dreary, it's windy, it's cold, there's fires in the distance. But thanks to, again, another Republic of Tea today. It's a Downton Abbey line themed. And I remember finding this tea a couple years ago at my workplace. My boss had it and I was obsessed with it. So I went down and bought it. But it's called Miss Patmore's Pudding Tea. It's a premium medium black tea with caramel and vanilla flavors. And as somebody who's trying not to eat sugar this month, this tea kind of just hits me where it needs to.
I love this tea. I mean, full disclosure, we've been hanging on to this tea for a couple years now, really rationing it because from a very early time from when you first got it, I think we both discovered how much we love it because it is such a soothing tea.
It's an incredible tea. Do you want to hear what it sounds like?
Please.
That's a really big sip.
That's it. You want to have big sips because it's just so good. It's such a soothing tea. It's mostly a black tea, but it's got like a little vanilla-ness, a little kind of sweet. But not too sweet. It's just the right amount of sweet.
It is. I'm worried it is going to keep me up late tonight because it is a premium black tea. But every time I take a sip of this tea, I truly can just imagine sitting by the fire in Downton Abbey. And that personally sounds like the most channeling Hallmark moment for me. Maybe someday we'll go visit Downton Abbey or the estate that played Downton Abbey, or even review some of Downton Abbey.
Yeah, I think we need to visit Downton Abbey to record an episode there while we review all of Downton Abbey.
We need to manifest this because this would be a dream come true for me.
Yeah. But anyways, here on Channeling Hallmark, we don't spill the tea. We sip the hot cocoa. Each week we share something that brought us a little bit of that warm and fuzzy feeling, gave us some hope for the world, made us feel like everything's going to be okay. Keetin, what was your hot cocoa this week?
Oh my gosh. This week I flew. I literally flew. The iFly, which is the indoor skydiving at Universal City Walk, actually was closing last weekend. And so me and a group of my friends who, we've been to City Walk at Universal so many times and walked by this kind of crazy clear tube where you can watch people fly, and just have never taken the leap of faith and done it. And we were like, well, if it's closing, I think we all need to be big kids that we are and do it. And I was on like a flying high for like hours afterwards. It was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. It was terrifying, but so much fun. And I'm so sad it's closing because I feel like it could have been a life's calling for me.
I can verify the I fly high feeling that Keetin had because she truly was. I don't know if I've ever seen you as happy as you were for the few hours after that. I apparently we need to get one of these installed in our house so you can just wake up every day and feel like that.
And do I fly? Yeah, or if like we're getting in a bad mood, like I'll listen to Channeling Hallmark while I fly in the iFly tube. But I would never skydive. I'm way too scared of heights. So this was such a wonderful way for me to like get that adrenaline rush in a way that I felt safe and also get that feeling of just like flight. And I'm just smiling ear to ear thinking about it again. So yeah, shout out to iFly. I'm going to come back one of these days.
I love that.
What's your hot cocoa?
My hot cocoa is, I will say, a little bit bittersweet, but because we are recording this at a time that there are actively fires going on around us in Los Angeles, my hot cocoa is actually all of our friends and all of the people around us, their responses. I have never felt like we are in such a strong and connected community as I have in the last 24 hours or so of these fires, because everybody is reaching out to everyone. Everyone is saying, hey, what can I do to help? Whether it be coworkers, friends, acquaintances that I barely even know, everybody is checking in with everyone and making sure that everybody is safe and offering their support and help in this time of need. And just seeing a community come together like that in a difficult time, I think does give me a little bit of hope for the world in this time that is kind of dark and scary right now.
No, I completely agree. It's been a scary couple of days, and I know as the winds continue and the fires continue, it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. So we do appreciate the support from everybody, the love, we feel it, and we send it right back out there to everybody. And if you need help, you know where to reach us. And yeah.
But I know no one is here to be depressed.
No.
So sorry for bringing things down. Now, I promise we will keep things a little more focused on happy, uplifting things, such as the wonderful and delightful movie Love at First Dance. Keetin, can you tell us about this one?
Yes. Well, in Love at First Dance, Hope has given up her Broadway dreams and now teaches engaged couples how to dance in preparation for their weddings. But when Manhattan's high society golden boy, Eric, comes to her for help before his wedding, he reignites both her dreams of choreographing on Broadway and maybe even her dreams for romance.
Starring Becca Tobin and Niall Matter, this 2018 Hallmark original movie shows that sometimes the best things do indeed happen while you're dancing. When we got married, we also took dance lessons to prepare for our first dance. So, given the theme of the month, would you recommend dance lessons before the big day? Or is it too much of a risk that one part of the couple falls in love with the instructor and calls off the wedding entirely?
Drama. Practicing for our choreographed dance before our wedding are some of my favorite memories. And we had two different dance instructors, a male and a female, who switched off because they were actually professional dancers and dancing in shows at the time. And no, I would say risk it for the biscuit in that manner.
Yeah, I will say, jumping into the movie, I think it did remind me of those times when we were practicing dancing before our wedding, and the way it made me feel was it was kind of a really joyful time. It's just being with each other. And this movie, I think, actually did capture that really well. The feeling that you get of just consistently dancing with a partner, trying out something new that's kind of scary at first, but then the more you do it, the more you get to enjoy it.
Well, and I totally understand now why so many Dancing with the Stars partners end up either dating or end up together in some way, because dancing is a very intimate thing. And if, like in the movie, your fiance is like, hey, how about you just do it with this instructor because I'm good, I know how to dance, and you don't. She was very negative towards him, and I did not appreciate that.
Yeah, that was a red flag right there.
Yeah, a huge red flag. I also have to say, shout out to Becca Tobin and Niall Matter, because I haven't seen either of them in a Hallmark movie before, and I know they've done multiple, but they were both so sweet and cute and charming, and like kind of the perfect Hallmark actor, in my opinion, of having that right amount of charisma. And even with kind of a silly script or like sometimes like silly scenes or whatnot, they really make it endearing and they ground it. And I felt like they both did that.
I agree with you on almost everything that you said, except you used the phrase silly script. And I actually, yes, those two were great. They had a lot of charisma and chemistry, but I actually liked the writing in this. I think Nina Weinman was the writer, and I actually really thought the dialogue had some clever lines, some nice little quips that actually made me laugh and think, oh, that was good writing right there. So this is one of the more pleasantly surprising scripts that I think we've seen so far in one of these movies.
You know what, to piggyback off of that, I literally have in my notes the Karate Kid reference. Like, really, it was super cute. It made my heart feel warm and fuzzy. It was a perfect chilling Hallmark moment. So I really appreciated that, and appreciating seeing them in a Hallmark movie give us like a pop culture reference that we recognize was fun. So
that line that you're referencing when he said, "What are you, Mr. Miyagi? Is this the Karate Kid?" was right before they go into a pond to practice dancing, which sounds a little weird, but I don't know if you had the same thought as me. The first thing that I thought of was, oh, are we referencing Dirty Dancing here? Because when they practice the lift in Dirty Dancing, they do that in water so that when she falls, she doesn't die. So when they went into that pond for a moment, I thought they were going to practice lifts, and I was like, I think that pond is not deep enough to do this. But it was more for other reasons. But that whole scene to me felt like a reference to Dirty Dancing.
You know what? I think you're probably exactly right. I don't know. I don't mean to be negative, but there was another issue I had with it. And then I'm going to get to the positive, because you start with the negative, then get to the positive. In the very first scene when the movie opens, she is at a wedding. And also, our choreographers did not get invited to our wedding. And I thought that was a little weird that she was getting invited to all the weddings she was choreographing for. But, to each their own. But she was basically wearing a white dress at that wedding. And if I would have saw this girl roll up in a white dress and be like, who's this chick? Because like if I'm friends with the bride and I don't recognize somebody, I'm like, who's this person who's wearing a white dress? I would have gotten a little defensive. Then the second wedding she got invited to, she brings a stranger to this wedding. She brings the guy to have him practice with her. And like, wedding guests are expensive. Unless you're willing to drop $100 or take somebody out to dinner, don't invite them to your wedding.
Well, I believe there was a line before that where she was told that she can bring a +1 to that wedding. Now,
they must have
would
money.
It be? They must have money. I mean, clearly all of these weddings were more people at their weddings than we had. Mm-hmm. But if you do get a +1, is it wise to bring someone that is apparently some big Manhattan socialite that literally gets reported about in newspapers that would probably draw attention away from the bride and groom? I think that might have been a faux pas of bringing someone that kind of distracts from their day, but maybe I'm wrong.
We need to get a etiquette expert in here to let us know some wedding etiquette.
If only we knew one.
The one really positive thing, and I think this was probably a really tough line to walk for Becca Tobin as her character. First of all, I did not think Niall and his fiance had much chemistry at all. And maybe that was intentional in the casting because it was kind of like a setup by their parents. It was kind of a business relationship. On the other hand, Becca and Niall had a ton of chemistry, but I felt like the way Becca made her choices as the dance coach, she was almost like a really great relationship therapist. I never felt like she crossed a line with him. Even though you could feel the tension, I felt like she always took that step back until she knew their relationship was done. And I really appreciated seeing that because a lot of times in rom-coms, Hallmark movies, whatever, you see that line crossed at a very inappropriate time before the other relationship has had a solid ending.
Yeah, I think we've definitely all seen those movies where you're not really on the protagonist's side. They do things, they say things that you're like, that's not something I would do. That's not something that any reasonable human being would do. And this was one where I totally agree with you. I liked her the whole time. I actually also, as much as he did make some mistakes, I think I liked him the whole time. I think they were very likable characters who were consistently making good choices. And I like seeing people make good choices.
Yeah.
Actually, on that note, though, one of the things that I had an issue with the movie is when they first meet. And they're trying to get backstage at this Broadway show opening, and she's not on the list. And he comes up, and the guy lets him in right away, and she is all upset about it. And then later he's like, oh, sorry, I acted like kind of a jerk back there. He did not act like a jerk. I think he did nothing wrong there, unless I missed some line of dialogue where he was being a little bit rude, but I thought he was acting perfectly fine. If anybody was acting like a jerk, that was kind of her time where she might have been a bit.
It's so funny you bring up that moment because when you were saying how you liked her the entire movie, that was the one time where I kind of got a little bit of an ick from her. And I was like, I don't want to have the ick from her because she is so cute and sweet and I want to be rooting for her this whole way. But I was a little nervous that she wasn't going to come back from that and that kind of was going to like offset their chemistry because at the end of the day, I mean, they're the two on the poster, that they're going to end up together at the end per Hallmark tropes. But I was a little nervous, but again, I think she came back around for me. And I also think like their ebb and flow, like I think they just really worked well together. And I thought they were adorable and props to Hallmark casting, props to those two actors. Maybe we'll interview them someday.
Well, and I guess another thing, just to keep preaching on how much these characters and the writing of them was great, they really pushed each other to be the best versions of themselves. And I think that was such a beautiful thing to portray. And kind of a silly, goofy rom-com is really a couple that does support each other and wants them to do the thing that they know will make the other happy, even if it is at their own expense. And I think that was really cool about this.
Yeah, because like he literally was like, you should go take the London job. You should be like trying to get this London job, knowing that he's kind of falling for this girl and he's probably going to end his engagement, but he's essentially sending her away. And I think that's like a really hard thing to do as a human being. But to see him do that and then to see kind of obviously the fates align and he ends up getting to go to London too and their relationship is able to flourish. That's why you always want to do the right thing because karma will come back around and gift you beautiful things.
Yeah. And I think there is at least one more thing that we do need to touch on with this movie. Buble.
Oh, so much buble.
This is, in Hallmark movies, you kind of assume they don't have a big budget. And oftentimes that means you have songs that it's like, oh, this kind of sounds like that other song. But this one, they had Buble. They had Michael Bublé singing in this song. Not him on screen, but they had a Michael Bublé song.
Yeah, they had a band in the background pretending to sing a Michael Bublé song.
Which was kind of funny because no one was actually singing in that band. But, there was this ethereal voice of Bublé.
It was the climax of them dancing. It was beautiful. And Bublé was serenading us. I love some Bublé.
But we do need to give this a marshmallow rating.
Yes, we do.
Keetin, do you want to start out?
Sure. I usually like the side characters in Hallmark movies. They make me giggle. They kind of like balance everything out. I really disliked her friend. I thought she was annoying and only there for awkward exposition that like literally all of her lines I felt like were unnecessary. You could have removed that character completely and the movie could have just done the way, like the only reason she was there is because she was in the show. I also did not like the fiance.
That's fair. I think the fiance
You're not
was the
supposed to
role.
like.
Yeah, she was the role that she needed to play.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the fairly uptight who feels kind of cold, and that is what she played.
Mm-hmm.
The friend, I did not have an issue with. I think obviously it's not the world's best writing or anything. You needed to have that exposition in some way, and I thought she provided that in a way that didn't bother me, but clearly it did not work for you.
Anyways, so because of my qualms with some of the side characters, I will give this 6.
6 marshmallows.
Marshmallows.
Wow. I think this isn't going to be quite a huge disagreement, but this is our biggest difference yet because I'm giving this 8 marshmallows.
Wow.
I thought this was a very soft and squishy movie for me. It really gave me the warm and fuzzies, and I would say this was actually one of my favorite movies we've reviewed so far. I think, sure, we've seen some more comedic ones, but just in terms of that marshmallow warm and fuzzy feel, this really gave that to me.
I'm second guessing everything.
So this movie featured a former Broadway performer who then started choreographing dances for couples for their first dance at their wedding. When we come back, we are going to interview someone who may be the person that this movie was based on.
So stay tuned because we'll be interviewing the real life Hope when we come back.
Our guest today is Catherine Ricafort McCreary, a former Broadway performer for 10 years who, along with being in Miss Saigon, Cinderella, SpongeBob SquarePants, among many other things, was also in the stage production of Mamma Mia. But as much as I really want to just spend an hour talking about Mamma Mia, you have actually done some really cool things since leaving the big city of New York. You received notoriety for starting Artists Who Code to help artists find work during the pandemic, but how we met you was another venture of yours called Broadway First Dance, where you help give couples the choreography and the confidence to make their first dance a special experience. So as someone who left the big city for a quieter life and now makes people's weddings even more magical, what is it like to basically have your life be a Hallmark movie?
Wow, what an intro. That is truly a Hallmark movie setup. It's actually really fabulous. I left New York City for sunny Arizona, so totally different. But unlike a typical Hallmark movie, I landed my man in LA on a reality TV show where we were in competing a cappella groups on the show called The Sing Off. And then we lived most of our lives together in New York, and then we moved together to Arizona. And it's really very different. Like it couldn't have been more of a 180. So I went from singing, dancing, and acting every day on stage, sometimes twice a day, in front of hundreds of people in New York City to now I work remotely for Stitch Fix, which is this very cool fashion tech company based in San Francisco. And I am a software engineer. And so I just write code and I sit in my chair and I code away and I have two kids now. And yeah, it's like I can't believe that those lives that I just described are the same person, but that all of that happened, like all of that change happened in the last like 4 years. So I'm having a great time, both in my former life and my current life.
Nice.
So I guess, in your former life, you
Mhm.
were this dancer, this singer. What initially drew you to that as, I guess, a kid?
So let's see. I think my mom always says that when she was pregnant with me, she just listened to Broadway records all the time, and she therefore claims credit for my success on Broadway, which she really deserves because she was a great, I call her my momager. She like really guided me through a lot of my early auditions and like what to wear and what to sing and what should I go for and you'd be great in this show. And so I think I got that from my family. I'm Filipino American and Filipinos just really love musicals. Our like idol is Lea Salonga, who is Filipina, and she's also most people know her as the voice of Mulan and the voice of Jasmine. So she sings A Whole New World and all that. But she's also a big Broadway star, and she is known for originating the lead role of Kim in Miss Saigon. So she was one of the people that I looked up to growing up because every Filipino like watches her and listens to her growing up. And then I actually got to work with her in New York in this show called Allegiance, which was starring George Takei from Star Trek. And it was kind of based on, it was a fictionalized version of his experience in internment camps during World War II with his family. Anyway, I got to work with two amazing Asian American actors in that show, Lea Salonga and George Takei. But yeah, so that's like kind of what drew me to it. It's like in my blood to love musical theater. I grew up doing a lot of community theater as a kid, and it was just really where like I was kind of like a nerd growing up, and so that's where I really had like a family outside my family, where I had my closest friends, and it's really just like creates like such lovely experiences.
That sounds amazing.
That is
for one thing.
incredible. Oh my gosh. Like also congratulations. What a wild ride of a career. And I love that your mom was so like integral in kind of helping you achieve those dreams.
Yeah, that sounds like such a cool like story to start it as well as continue it. But I guess, do you have what is your favorite role that you've played so far?
I'll mention two. My favorite role is most people haven't heard of the show, but it was in this original Broadway show called Honeymoon in Vegas. It was based on this movie from the 90s starring Sarah Jessica Parker and Nicolas Cage. And I won't go into the whole plot, but there's this like funny featured role in the movie because part of it happens in Hawaii. And there's this local tour guide there played by Pat Morita, who is known for playing Mr. Miyagi in Karate Kid. And for the musical version, they decided to make that a female character. And I also ended up like comically seducing the lead character in this whole like convoluted plot. But it was a really great role because I had this whole solo and I got to show off my talents as a triple threat, which in the biz means 3 talents of singing, dancing, and acting in this number that I did. And I got to ride this like pink Jeep that they built for the set, and I like drive it around. And I had one of those like wiggling Hawaiian hula girls on the dashboard. But anyway, it was very cute. So that's one of my favorite roles because it was part of an original Broadway cast, which is like a respected thing to do in the industry because you can come into a long running show like, for example, Wicked, and you can plug into it, but it's like not as big a deal because you're joining a show that's been running for a long time versus if you are part of the original cast. It's kind of like if you're in tech, like being at a startup really early on, like one of the first 10 employees at Google before it became Google, kind of like that. So anyway, that's one of my favorite roles because I got to really create it and inform it. So if anyone out there listening does community theater, usually when you do theater, the shows have already been written and you just like read the lines that have been written and performed there by many actors before. But when you're an original cast, you are in the room with the writers and you get to go back and forth. And sometimes they write lines around you and your unique talents, and you get to collaborate and create the piece together sometimes. So that's why that was my favorite. But then the one that most people probably know is when I was in SpongeBob SquarePants, which was my last Broadway show. I got to play Karen the computer, who is a villainess, also comedic villainess. I have a thing for comedic villainesses, I guess. It's my specialty. Is that a thing in Hallmark movies? Do they ever have comedic villains?
I think so. I mean, if they don't, they should call you, get your number, because they should start writing some in. I think they do sometimes have like the woman who's trying to like.
I mean, I think
mess
the answer
things
is
up.
not nearly enough,
Yeah.
and they clearly need to hire you for some of those.
We should add some spice. But
Yes.
anyway, that's my other favorite role. And then cheesy answer is I love being a mother. That is my new role right now, and it's great.
So you've had all these amazing roles. Do you think, and I know your life has kind of completely changed in the last 4 years, do you think you're ever going to go back?
Ooh, yes, good question. I like to think I could. I like to have the option. It's interesting because I first got interested in engineering more as like an escape from the turmoils of a life in musical theater as a profession, because it's really hard. And, so I went into it for practical reasons like money and stability and this and that and health insurance, like basic things. But I ended up really liking it and the whole lifestyle that it offers and like the sense of empowerment that it gave me and having like agency in my career and also being able to build and create things. Like if I have a business idea, I can build it. And so, yeah, I liked it more than I thought. And then same thing with being a parent. I was like, oh, well, I want to be a parent because that's just what I guess I think I should do. But I like really, really, really love it. So if I go back to theater one day, I would go back, not really because, I have things left undone, which there are always things. I always would keep adding things to my checklist of like dream things I want to do. And the great thing is I got to achieve a lot of them, but I'm human and I just kept adding more and more. So that list will never be complete. Like there's many things I still want to do on Broadway, but I don't have to do them. Like if they stress me out, if it stresses me out, like, cause I've tried doing some theater here and there here in Arizona locally. And it's like, it's been interesting to figure out how much of it I like need in my life to make me happy and how much of it is too much actually and takes away from the things I'm enjoying, which is a more quiet life at home with my kids and actually being fulfilled at work and committing to that. So anyway, the sassy answer is I would love to go back one day. We talk about types. Like in musical theater, we have types. You have like the young ingenue, and then all of a sudden you age out of that into like the sassy old diva lady. And I want to like wait till I age into that and then go back to New York.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
That seems like that'd be such a more fun role anyways.
Right?
So.
I know. I think I'm more suited to it. But yeah, I would love to go back. Like I realized that like life is actually really long and there's time to like live all of these different lives. Like I used to have one picture of my life and it's been cool. I've gotten to live two full stories already. Like one as a Broadway actress, one now as, a woman in tech as a software engineer. What I really miss is the camaraderie of the theater scene. I don't necessarily miss like the business. I miss my friends. Like when I go back and watch the shows now, what I really like is the vibe backstage and kikiing with my friends and saying hi and just like that snappiness and rapport that we have that like I definitely don't get in the tech world now. It's different. I get other things there. But yeah, I would love to come back, maybe even not necessarily on stage, but as a producer or, on the creative side. So that's something I'm like slowly exploring here too.
I love that. Well, speaking of kind of your new life and kind of now having time for these business ventures, one of those business ventures is one that's how we met you with Broadway First Dance. What made you kind of come up with this idea to start helping couples who were getting married kind of create these magical first dances?
Ooh, this is a good one. So let's see. I was in New York and I'd been doing lots of shows on Broadway. One of these friends of mine was getting married and she asked me if I could choreograph a dance for her because she wanted something very specific. I think that like out there right now, even today, I think like most of your options are to go to like Fred Astaire dance studios or something, which is really kind of targeted more towards like my parents' generation, I would say. And it's more traditional ballroom dancing, kind of like your, like a just like a slow basic waltz, a little bit of a turn here and there. But she wanted to do a mashup medley of like 5 songs that started off with Turn Down for What? Is that the name of the song? Yeah.
Tone down for what? Yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. And ended with A Whole New World. Like I ran the whole gamut of like hip hop music and Disney, and there was a musical theater section in there. And she just like had this vision for it, but needed someone who could realize that. And I was like, well, I'm definitely the person for you. Like I'm one of the only people I know who could create this for you, because she wanted something that told a story and that was theatrical and funny and cute and romantic all at the same time. Which is really like what she and her husband are like. And so I choreographed this dance for her, and I edited together all of the music, and I like put some of their personality and their story into it. And it was really fun. I got to show them a bit of my world because, like I said, they have day jobs. I think she was working at Google at the time, and hadn't really danced before. And so I gave them a peek into my world. So I rented dance studio space in the heart of New York City where auditions were happening, and like a lot of my friends were, rehearsing for shows and things like that. And we got our own like little studio in there, and we had our private lessons in there. And I gave them, it was like only maybe 2 months before their wedding, and so we just knocked it all out in like 3 lessons. And I taught them how to dance in a lot of different styles, taught them the basics, an intro of like, a little salsa, a little hip hop, a little this and that, and threw in some partnering, a few lifts here and there, and then designed this dance around them and got them ready for their wedding. And so that's where the idea of Broadway First Dance happened. Was I enjoyed doing that so much. I wanted to do it again. So actually then I got married pretty soon. I think it was after that. And my husband and I, we choreographed our own dance. And so we did something totally different. Like every couple is very different. So we did a pretty traditional dance to this like slow Frank Sinatra rendition of, I think it's pronounced Gingy, Dindi. I'm not sure. But it was like this bossa nova track that we had heard in Hawaii when we got engaged. And so we just did a slow waltz for that. But then it led into this little surprise number, because I am a Broadway lady, of the Austin Powers theme song. And so we like broke out into a lot of the 60s stuff. You can't see me right now, but I'm doing the frug. And it was so cute, and it was so much fun. But I had to design it. I'm a very professional trained dancer. I can do kicks and turns, but I couldn't do all of that in my dress. So we had to constrain it to the dress and all this stuff. But we got so many laughs from our friends and so many tears and everything. It's just like so wonderful to share this love and this humor that like we have between us with our whole family and friends. Give them a little something, to surprise them. And so I had a lot of fun doing that too. And I decided to do Broadway First Dance because actually this is such a long answer, but this is for anyone who has wedding fever out there. So I was trying to break into tech at this time in New York. So I was going to all of these meetups, and one of them was at Zola, which if you've attended a wedding in like the last 10 years, like a lot of registries are done on this website called Zola. And so I went to their office, and they hosted this event for women in tech. And the woman I sat down next to, we just started chatting. And I told her that I'd just been choreographing these wedding dances. And then she remembered me like 2 years later when she got engaged, and reached out to me on LinkedIn to choreograph her dance. And so I did. But that was like the first Broadway First Dance client, and it was during COVID. And so I had envisioned it being like me choreographing and teaching, but I was already here in Arizona. And so I collaborated with one of my dance partners in New York, and together, like the 3 of us like worked it all out and got them ready for their wedding. And they had a whole different kind of dance for them. So anyway, that's how it happened.
I love that.
So we have worked with you and had an amazing experience, both
Yay!
working with you, learning the dance, and doing the dance at our wedding. But I guess, can you just take a moment to kind of share why you think it's important that couples go through an experience like this leading up to their wedding, and why the first dance is an important thing?
Yeah. So I guess in a nutshell, the other reason I created Broadway First Dance was I was a stressed out bride for a time when I was planning my wedding. And there were all these components of a wedding that are quite saturated nowadays in the market. But I realized that like as I was attending a lot of other friends' weddings, that one part that everyone suddenly seems surprised by that comes up is the dance. Like they know they've been thinking about their cake for ages, right? Like in like the movie The Wedding Planner, like Jennifer Lopez's character has been like thinking about her cake since she was a kid. But then like a lot of couples get up there who have no dance experience, and then the dance comes and they're suddenly so nervous and it becomes a source of stress for them. And so I wanted to help people through that. And because to me, dancing is a lot of fun. And I also was like, there's a lot more opportunity here than just like, awkwardly slow dancing side to side for 3 minutes. Like we can make this really fun in the age of like, So You Think You Can Dance, which is really popularized this format of two people doing a short dance that really tells a great story in all these different styles. And I was also inspired by Dancing with the Stars, where people who maybe didn't have any dance experience can like suddenly feel fabulous on the dance floor. It's this like really wonderful thing to move your body with your partner in front of other people, in front of your friends and family, and get like a wonderful reaction to express yourself. And I think what's really important for couples is that like in the midst of all of this stress, when you're just like looking at budgets and seating charts and all this stuff, you like forget why you're getting married, and you forget to hold each other and look each other in the eye and hold each other's arms and feel that physical chemistry. And so I actually kind of think of dancing together and rehearsing together leading up to a wedding as something kind of like what like prenatal yoga is. Like it's like a very good way before this big event in your life to prepare and step into a room and like leave all of that planning and the spreadsheets outside the door and hold each other for a bit and like learn something new together. Because also these days, it's like a lot of couples have already been living together for a long time, even though then they get engaged and then they get married. But what's really fun about teaching couples to dance is that when you suddenly teach them all of these different holds and how to dip your partner and things like that, you suddenly get like the nervous butterflies again in front of each other, because you're like, wait, I've never held my partner like this, or I didn't know you could be so commanding in this way. So that's why I think it's important.
I literally got goosebumps when you were describing that. And Dylan and I were talking, we were like, yeah, that we loved our dance lessons times, because it was a time when really we could just shut off everything else and just kind of play together in a way that we had never really done that.
It truly felt like the most enjoyable wedding preparation that we had. It felt like that kind of escape from the rest of wedding planning. That not that it was like a super stressful thing, wedding planning,
but like we get to go to dance
yeah,
lesson
we get to go
now.
to dance. And I was one of those people that had zero experience with dance before. That was my first time like learning choreography, and I loved it. And I would have been exactly what you just described going into our first dance had we not used you, because I would have been, oh, now I guess I just like sway back and forth. How do I do this?
Yep.
But you gave me that confidence in the choreography that we had a lot of fun with the experience at our wedding, where we actually liked it so much we did it twice at our wedding.
We did do it twice at our wedding.
Are you kidding me? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so because initially we wanted to do it outside, and it was raining, and the band couldn't set up outside because our friend was going to sing it. And so the rain stopped right when kind of dinner ended. So we had to kind of make like a game time call of like, are we just going to do it outside to a track, or are we not going to do outside at all? And we're like, screw it. It's not raining. Let's just do it outside to a track and have fun with it. And it will probably be easier to do it than the whatever the band had figured out to do it with the track. And so
just so I can picture this, when we say outside, we're talking outside of this castle.
Yes.
Ireland, right?
Yes,
outside
exactly.
in front of the Irish castle. And
that was to the track. That was very,
very
clean,
clean,
organized.
Yes, it was me in my big dress, like my big poofy giant ball gown, which we'd never done it in before.
But then later in the night, when we actually were on the dance floor and we were indoors, we talked to the band and they were like, hey, if you want, you could just do it again have your friends sing and all that. And we were like, you know what? Sure. We did all the formalities. Let's just have fun. And we kind of loosened up. It was a lot goofier, and it was so much fun to just do the same thing again, but in a very different way. And it kind of also showed that same choreography, but handled in an entirely different way. And it made it, both experiences were beautiful in different ways, but they were very different.
Yeah, for sure.
Wait, I love so much. That should be a Hallmark movie right there.
Oh, well, we'll see. Well, speaking of, for couples potentially listening who might want to do this,
Mhm.
how do you typically work with couples, and how could they get in touch with you to potentially do Broadway First Dance?
So if you want to get in touch, you can reach me at broadwayfirstdance@gmail.com. And we're also at the same handle on Instagram and Facebook. And the way that it usually works is I'll talk to a couple and they'll usually have an idea in mind already of what song or songs they are thinking of. Sometimes they're like still waffling between a few. Let's see, yours, for example, was like you had some videos already and you had this like song that really meant a lot to you already from
Come What
Moulin
May from
Rouge.
Moulin Rouge. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful vision. But then, like I said, there are other couples who are like, I want to start with Turn Down for What? So people come to me with some ideas already. And then we'll talk and then I'll ask the couple about both of their dance experience because it may vary and how much time they have leading up to the wedding. We really should aim for a dance that's only about 1 to 2 minutes long because you don't want to stress yourself out memorizing more choreography than that. And that's also a good length of time to entertain your guests and not get them bored. Separately, I'll ask the bride about your dress because it's very important to choreograph around the dress because some dance instructors, they'll just like choreograph and choreograph and choreograph. And then on the day of, you put the dress on, you're like, wait, I can't even move my legs or I can't lift my arms beyond my shoulders. And so I really keep that in mind and find out what your shoes are like and all this stuff. I ask you about your venue and what is your floor and do you have a band and all this. So I gather a lot of information. And then usually we'll usually do maybe 3 or 4 lessons. And the first session, I call it an introduction to dance around the world or different styles. I'll teach you a little bit of a salsa and teach you some of those holds. They're very saucy and hot. We'll do a little bit of disco and we'll do a little bit of traditional waltz. And then at the very end, we'll maybe try a couple of basic lifts. But this is fun for the couples too. You already walk away from this first lesson with, new ways of holding each other, new moves for when you attend other people's weddings and just want to impress your friends. And then the second lesson is then setting the number on you is what we call it. And we'll like teach you the first half of the dance and we'll like just really front load it and then have you go practice that at home and we'll send you home with a video of you doing it so that you can remember what it was. And then the next lesson will teach you the second half and review the first half as well. And then you can go home and marinate on that and practice that. And then the final lesson is what I call the dress rehearsal, which is like it is on Broadway, where we mock as much of it as we can. Now, often we can't have the full real dress because you don't want to, reveal that yet. But I'll have you bring your actual wedding shoes. I'll have the husband often bring like if you have a constraining jacket or something, and then the bride I'll ask you to bring like a mock skirt or anything that can help pretend like we have all the elements there. And then this lesson is really just about getting you to feel as confident as you possibly can and just like putting like the cherry on top of the cake because at this point you've already been like reviewing the whole dance and we just want to get you feeling comfortable. And so that's how it usually goes. And then after that, I'm just like, here, if you have any last minute questions and need to call me from the dance floor or there are any surprises. I haven't had any couples call me yet, but like that's part of what's included is an emergency FaceTime lesson or pivot like the day of the show.
And I'll just jump in and clarify too that we worked with you fully remotely. You did a
Yeah.
great job of finding a local dance instructor, a local studio that we could work with. So anyone, anywhere, theoretically, can go to you for their first dance.
That's right. And the reason it's called Broadway First Dance too, I forgot to mention, is kind of like Dancing with the Stars, is that these aren't just any old dance teachers. Like people who are teaching for Broadway First Dance are people who have appeared in Hamilton or who have danced with Bruno Mars. And they are like really accomplished, very cool professional dancers. And the fact that you get to learn and study with them is you get a peek into this like celebrity world of the world's top dancers. And that's what's so fun about it.
Yeah, I think our instructor immediately after us went to work on Beetlejuice.
It gave me my Dancing with the Stars moment at my wedding, and that was
Yay!
a dream of mine. And so, yeah, I am so grateful we found you. I'm so shocked that there's not more of this out there. Like you are like kind of a one of a kind with Broadway First Dance, and I can't recommend going to you more for kind of leading up to your wedding.
Well, if anyone out there is listening and is interested, we don't just do couple dances. I actually had a couple recently that hired us for their couple dance, but also instead of like a father-daughter dance or a mother-son dance, they wanted to include both sets of parents and their siblings. And so they did a surprise family dance And it was to We Are Family. And it was cool because they had in-person lessons, because I think in person, if you can get it, is very, very important. But for something like this, you know, it's kind of like oh gosh, what do you call those dances that were really in like 10 years ago? Like
flash mobs.
Flash mob. Yeah. So something like that, you want someone who's experienced with putting together like remote tutorials. And so I did that for the family dance. And so I made tutorial videos for the parents and for the siblings, including like football diagrams of like where to stand and all that. And then they put it all together at the rehearsal dinner, and it went off without a hitch. And it was so cute. So we do dances like that too. The other reason that you're asking, like, why did I put Broadway First Dance together? And I mentioned earlier, like being Filipino, is that like dance is so much a part of our lives. Like when we have this thing that's kind of like a quinceañera or bat mitzvah, when a young woman in the family turns 18, we have this debutante ball, we call it a debut. And there's this whole thing that's called a cotillion. And it's just like a court of like 18 couples, like your best friends. And you all like spend months learning a cotillion dance that you then dance in front of everybody at the party, and you're all wearing ball gowns and stuff. And like there's just like lots of dancing involved at all of these events. And I noticed here in America, like people like feel really awkward about dancing, but to us it's just so much fun and it's essential. And so I wanted to bring more of that dance, like I mentioned, to like a Bollywood wedding. Like there's like more of that feeling to American weddings.
I love that.
Yeah. I guess just one last thing on Broadway First Dance too. For couples listening who might be interested, do you have kind of just a quick pitch of why you think they should go to you for their first dance?
Oh, absolutely. I think that your only other options out there are to go to a very old-fashioned traditional ballroom dance studio. And what Broadway First Dance does differently is that we customize it to you, and we create something that is, if you want it, very, you know, YouTube ready, TikTokable. It was like so cute and so memorable. But it's really modern and personalized and so much more fun. Like we make it a whole experience. It's not just about the end result, which is your dance, which is going to look fabulous, but it's also about that whole journey. And I like to think that our couples like walk away feeling more confident in themselves and in each other afterwards, and that like you've learned something new, and it's so exciting.
I love that.
Can verify that.
Yeah, can absolutely verify. Channeling
Thank
Hallmark stamp of approval for Broadway First
Yay.
Dance, for sure. So one of the fun things we do on the show, and we always like to ask guests, is we talk about our hot cocoa of the week every week. And it's just kind of like a moment or something we saw that, you know, an experience that made us feel kind of warm and fuzzy. Do you have a hot cocoa from the past year?
There's too many hot cocos because I have young children. I had a daughter who was born just 3 months ago. I have a son who is almost 2. So all of my days are brimming with hot cocoa. I love it. I guess something just to pick one is it was Christmas recently, and my son, it was his second Christmas, but it was the first one where he kind of really understood the concept of opening presents and finding toys. And it was just so wonderful to watch him open his presents. And he had this gift from my brother. It was a kind of old-fashioned wooden building set where you have like a lot of rods and then like little wheel things with holes in them, and then you put more rods together. Anyway, the moment when I first put 2 pieces together and it turned into like a set of wheels, he just lit up, and he just got so excited, and his eyes got so wide, and his posture just suddenly got so straight. And then he started like yelling for me to build him an airplane. He was saying airplane, airplane, airplane. And I started building him an airplane. And then when he saw it turn into an airplane, he was just flabbergasted. It was just like all of these first moments. It's just so magical to watch. It melts my heart.
I love that so much. I love that you're like this powerhouse, not only like artist, businesswoman, coder, but mom. Like talk about mom boss, talk about girl boss. And I love that you really take the time to sip the hot cocoa in your life. It's very inspiring.
Well, your sentence of "my days are brimming with hot cocoa" might be like the best outlook on life that I think I've heard from someone. I love that.
Oh, so I'm gonna call it that now. I hadn't heard it phrased that way, but I like this.
Yeah, spread it.
We can make a T-shirt.
We've discussed that because our favorite way of describing it is here on Channeling Hallmark. We don't spill the tea; we sip the hot cocoa, and I feel like
Oh,
a nice,
that's so
right?
cute.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
pre-ordering that shirt.
Okay, I was gonna say,
Perfect.
once we have our merch ready, we'll send you one for sure
Okay.
for being one of our first guests. So before we wrap up here, is there anything that you're working on, personal projects, or anything coming out soon you want to plug? This is the time to do it.
I guess you could just check me out on Instagram. I'm at Cat Ricafort, CatRicafort. Check out Broadway First Dance. It's exactly that on Instagram and Facebook. And the most reliable way of reaching me right away is broadwayfirstdance@gmail.com. And we can have a first meeting if you're just curious, like how it all works and all that stuff. And we can talk about your vision for your dance, or I can help you come up with one. But yeah, I guess just a little bit about Artists Who Code. So I was an artist on Broadway, singing, dancing, and acting. And as beautiful as that was, it got really hard and it's not a very reliable source of income. And as I wanted to get married and have kids and own a house and all these things, I considered a different path. And so I decided to pivot into software engineering. It was really difficult. And the rewards were like so wonderful and life-changing. It enabled all these things, like enabling us to buy a house and move across the country and have health insurance for ourselves and for our children and all this stuff. Things that are hard to do as an artist. But yeah, Artists Who Code, it's this, I kind of call it like a not so secret society. It's this organization of fellow artists of all types, like dancers and singers and actors and classical musicians and lighting designers and painters. And anyway, Artists Who Code is this organization that helps people make that pivot. I think during COVID, we helped 300 something people like learn to code and just like discover what that is and introduce them into tech. And we helped, I don't know the actual numbers, but like a good number of them decided to like continue on and study it intensely and got their first jobs in tech. And so now we have this like really cool network. My dream is that like in 5 more years, like in 10 years, that there'll be this whole wave of like leaders in tech, because tech touches like every part of our lives now. If it's a fashion company, it's also a tech company. If it's a health company, it's also a tech company. Everything is a tech company. And so it's very important. And I think it's great to have artists and people who have lived, you know, kind of unusual paths like this and have struggled with things like unemployment or have devoted their lives to making people laugh and then turn their focus to something else. To have people like that with that kind of perspective leading such big important companies, like I'm excited for that maybe to marinate in 5 to 10 years. So anyway, that's just a little bit about Artists Who Code. Nothing to really plug there, but that's what it is.
Well, it is such a cool thing. And I know if anybody is interested in more, you're featured in the LA Times, so we can link out to that article in the show notes for this.
Thank you. And I have to say thank you for alerting me to the Hallmark movie Love at First Dance, which I watched last night with my mom and my husband. My mom is the one who really loves the Hallmark movies.
Since we have you and since you watched it, we'll ask, did it portray things accurately in terms of someone who was from Broadway making the transition to teaching, and you know, how did that feel compared to reality?
Well, some of it was accurate, but a lot of it, and this just feels like nitpicking, but like just for example, like the size of that dance studio, come on, it was way too big and way too clean to be a studio in New York. Like even the most expensive dance studio is going to be kind of dirty and like have like a broken heater in the corner. It was just way too big and way too beautiful. She's like, there's like 2 people in this like space that could fit 100 students, which in New York they will cram full of 100 students, or they wouldn't even have a room that big. They would subdivide it into like 10 studios and like be renting those out every hour, and it would be totally full. But the reality is it's just like much smaller and dirtier, but that's part of the fun.
Do you advocate for teaching dancing in ponds in Central Park?
Oh, absolutely not. My first thought was like, gosh, like you don't know what's in there. Like I'm sure people use this as their public bath. Like we don't know. But what is accurate though is that like with a good teacher and with some time, like you can really get very far with dance. Like I think that's why I actually really enjoy teaching couples who are getting married, because a lot of them don't have dance experience. Like, you know, I've danced with like the industry's top dancers, but I actually don't enjoy teaching other good dancers because I really enjoy seeing people go kind of like from 0 to like 80. Like you can get very, very far with just a few lessons if it's explained in the right way. And then like it gave you some good analogies and they kind of, get you over some awkward things with like just like your weight balance and shifting and stuff like that. It's like, it's pretty magical how far you can get. So that is actually accurate, that you can get quite far in just a few lessons.
Well, I think that's it. This was an incredible interview. I'm just so in awe with what you've been able to do with your past life and your current life, and I'm sure they're going to continue to merge beautifully as you go on with your hot cocoa babies. So.
And thank you for giving me the new term, "My life is brimming with hot cocoa."
Oh.
That was Catherine Ricafort McCreary, and thank you so much for listening to another episode of Channeling Hallmark. I have been your host, Dylan Cashbaugh.
And I've been your other host, Keetin Markey. Remember to follow us across all of our social media platforms at Channeling Hallmark, and you can follow Dylan and I each individually on Letterboxd as well as our Instagrams. Mine's at Keetin. What's yours?
Mine's at DP Cashbaugh.
I love it.
And we hope that you continue to channel Hallmark throughout your week.
Stay cozy, y'all. Bye-bye.
Channeling Hallmark is an independently produced podcast and is neither sponsored nor sanctioned by Hallmark or any other entity. Thank you for listening.